Last one is I have to cut off a relationship with my mother. It doesn't matter what I do, how I do it, or why I do it. I will always be her child, even when she's on her deathbed and I'm entering old age myself. In that relationship, I had no chance to be a man or even a better person, and I want to avoid doing that with others if I can. On that note, I'm wondering what your thoughts are about rites of passage based upon personality, if we should, and how we can restore this tradition. I'm defining a rite of passage as a transitory event after which a person should think of themselves differently, and when an individual acquires new rights and responsibilities. For example, being of the age to drink, drive, and rent a car were rights because I was old enough, but it didn't feel like I was different, and I didn't feel like I had different obligations. I want a rite of passage to be tied to personality, being a better / gooder man. I don't think it is. It's strictly in what others can depend upon you for. So if there are no more rights waiting for us in life, save for death, how can we actively shift the way people relate to us, simulating a rite of passage? Is it as simple as setting / changing boundaries and changing what things we do to leveraging quote unquote people like us do things like this, thereby changing the way the person relates to me?
Is that it?
Yeah.
We got it.
It's a lot.
There's a lot. So it just made me think, did you feel different after your bar mitzvah?
No.
That was because, I mean, not that bar mitzvahs have never, but when I went to them, I was like, I do not think you feel like a man right now.
Did you feel differently after you lost your virginity?
That might have been one.
That was one.
That was one. And it was more just like stress was real. I was like, whew. Thought that would never happen because that might have been one. But there's a lot in there. So let's start with this. Your mother, you'll always be your child. I mean, my mom actually says that to me, which is I can never not have you be my son, and that's fine. But what's interesting in a relationship, and I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't, because I don't know any specifics about the relationship with your mother. She can view you as a child without you accepting that view of yourself. You know what I mean? She can view you as her child, and you could say, yes, I am her child, but I am still a man, and I will behave as such.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I'm my parents' child, but also a 32-year-old man. Like, I don't think that label is a bad thing. We're all someone's child. Sure.
And perhaps to her, that means that she needs to cut the corners off your sandwiches or, do X, Y, and Z. My mom has been trying to send me masks for stuff, and I'll often have to tell her, stop. Like, I don't need this. But I wonder, and I'm not saying for sure because you didn't really include specifics, if there's not a middle ground of cutting your mom off versus part of being an adult means you don't have to accept the relationship. So she says, no, this is how it's going to be. Part of being adult isn't, oh, it's my way or the highway. It's, no, actually, it's going to be like this, like.
Sure. And also, just to be clear, maybe this mom is incredibly destructive, drug addict, abusive. Case, there are reasons to cut your mom off. But also, you can define the relationship to be whatever you want it to be, and you can draw boundaries. And then if she oversteps them, if you say, yeah, we can have calls once a week, but you have to stop calling me every day, and she keeps calling you, okay, there can be a penalty for crossing a boundary.
What's interesting is as I think through the question, and if I'm mischaracterizing, let me know, Justin. It seems like you want a rite of passage so other people treat you differently.
Yeah.
And it seems like what you need is to sit down and do your own internal rite of passage so that you feel differently, because you're waiting on other people to treat you differently and tell you that you're a certain way. And what that might be is an indication that you haven't assumed the mantle of self-directed, I take your advice, but I make the decision.
Your own man, whatever that means to you.
Well, I think, and it's, here, I appreciate your counsel, but I'll make the final decision type of thing. And if people, I know that there were periods in my life where everyone thought that they would counsel me, and it wasn't a rite of passage, but when I left my job, everybody thought that they would tell me how I was going to do it, and I didn't listen. And after that, the advice that I received was very different. It was offered not as a commandment, but as advice, because that was the rite of passage where I said, you don't tell me what to do anymore with my behavior.
I actually think maybe people are going to come at me and tell me this is wrong. In today's age, I think rite of passage is overrated, or not the way that I would think about it. It's just a choice. Like, the sense I got from this question was that the person wants some sort of thing that he can do that will then make him feel like a man, and make other people treat him like a man, right? Like living in the wilderness for 6 months and then coming out the other side and having mom or friends or whatever go, oh wow, like now you're a different person. And I think I would throw that thought away if I were you, and especially if you live in the Western world and are over 18. And I would just say this is just a choice.
I actually don't, as you say that, college was a rite of passage, man. That was a thing. We moved out of the house, we went to college. For me, going abroad was another level of independence.
Well, what are you defining rite of passages? I mean, these are things that you did, sure.
They were clear delineations of a before and an after period. When I lived in my parents' house, there were rules and responsibilities for what it meant to live in my parents' house and how decisions would be made. And like on a line, the day that I went to college, things changed.
Yeah, but if you hadn't gone to college and had become a construction worker, things still would have changed.
They would have not shifted on a dot.
No, they would have. If you had gotten a job and gotten your own apartment.
If you moved out.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing.
Sure, so a rite of passage could be leaving.
Leaving, yes. So I actually do think that they're important.
But I don't think that's a rite of passage. I actually think, and maybe you can just define it differently. My sense would be someone can only control you to the extent that you let them or give them power over you. So if you are going to live in someone's place and not pay rent, and then they want to tell you what to do, yeah, like you don't get to necessarily be a self-directed adult because you're living off of them. You know what I mean? They're supporting you. But that, I guess, rite of passage sounds like something else to me. And to me, this is not just true of your parents. This is true of anyone. If someone comes into your house and you're paying the rent for them, you get to kind of tell them what's up. And then if you go out and live on your own, no one gets to control you, and you're your own person. I think it's just it's about dependence.
Sure. So for you, what I would recommend is, because we don't know the particulars of your own life, you're asking like you kind of want a culturally prescribed rite of passage, or what do we think, or that's at least the way that I'm hearing it. What I would do is sit very still, take three deep breaths, close your eyes, and say, what rite of passage do I need to step into the role of independent man so that I can still potentially, this is your call to add this optional, relate to my mother? What do I need to do? And I don't know your situation. It might be move out. It might be become financially independent. It might be tell her the truth about things that you've been hiding from her because she calls you and nags you and you just keep secrets from her to avoid the nagging. I suspect the good news is that this is more in your control than you perceive, and it doesn't have to be, oh, we've all gathered together to put you on a chair and sing.
That's what I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is it's actually 100% in your control. Mm-hmm. Achieve financial independence, and then make whatever decisions you want with regards to all the people in your life who you want to see and not see, and how much sway they have in your decisions.
And weirdly, the rite of passage is going to be in cutting that cord, which is people who are dependent upon their mother or their brother or their sister or their friend to behave in a certain way can only go so far away before they yank the chain and go, well, I'm not going to do that, and you're yanked right back.
Yeah, we've seen this with someone we know. So sure, I'll get behind that a huge rite of passage if you want to be decisive, independent, and in control of your life is financial independence.
And to recognize, and I think as I think of this particular individual, that love is not about providing for necessarily, being dependent upon, or controlling the other person. Like that you can be two independent adults that love and care for one another and want the best, but do not have direct control over finances or behaviors of the other. And that can be a tough phase for both the parent and the child to.
That's the best form of love, I think, in parental relationships and in romantic relationships.
A certain age, when you're 6.
No, yeah. I'm saying if you're above 18 or you're above 21.
Yeah.
I'm specifically, I'm thinking in dating relationships too. Mm-hmm. Like I've had times where I was supporting a girlfriend, and I actually think that to some extent it taints the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think with parents or with friends or with romantic people, what you said is true. It's not just parents. It's like when you're two independent adults that do not depend on the other person for shelter or food. Now you can
still choose.
Now you can choose. Yeah. Now you can decide what your relationship is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hope that helps. And if we missed because it was a long question,
This guy's sitting here just
I apologize. Like you completely whipped.